Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we have Miles Everson, CEO of MBO Partners and author of the brand new book, Free Birds Revolution. Now, in this episode, I am going to just break open the favorite parts of the book for me, and Miles is going to go beyond the text. Now, if you don't know Miles, you've been living under a rock. So Miles is the CEO of MBO, and MBO was the pioneer in enabling and bringing this flexible workforce to reality. It was started in 96. The acronym for it means My Business Office, and it's been an absolute pioneer. Now, Miles's book is really going to dive into why we're seeing this independent workforce, what it means for every single company, and how to get started. Now, his episode is so perfectly timed because this last couple of weeks, it's been like the weeks of data. Now, MBO is the one that runs the State of Independence report. So a lot of the data usually feeds from them. And there's been such an increased amount of data that really just makes this episode today so insanely important. Now, I'm going to screen share real quick. So if you're listening and you can look down at your phone or look at your laptop, take a look at this. I'm showing you a quick slide for an upcoming keynote that we're presenting, and it shows some of this data. Now, I'm going to tell you the 4 themes, and then and we'll talk about in this episode, the actual data points. So the first thing is that individuals love it. Between 64 and 90% of individuals are saying, nope, not going to go to a full-time job. I'm sticking with being independent. Companies love it. We're seeing 52% of companies have increased their usage, but an overall 260% increase in demand for flexible talent. Third, it's working from a size and permanence perspective, and flexible talent as an industry. This industry has an over 17% compound annual growth rate. Now, last thing, we're on the right side of history. When we talk about AI and downsizing, it's never been more important to really embrace a flexible workforce. Now, I'm going to stop rambling. If you want to see that data, go and buy a Knowledge Hub subscription. But we're going to dig into this with Miles, and you are really going to feel, and I promise you, I'm going to show you the book one more time. It's like going beyond the text. So enjoy, and most importantly, go drive some change. Have you seen Human Cloud's market map? We took the over 1,000 flexible talent solutions and crunched them into a global snapshot. Check this out. We broke them down by segments, by large horizontal marketplaces, vertical niche platforms, fractional platforms, hybrid platforms, even the providers like freelance management solutions, EORs, payroll solutions, and the increasing digital workers. Now, it doesn't end here. Next, you'll see the rolling out of these specialized platforms. You'll see the consulting talent platforms, the tech, the IT. Did you know there's some just for customer experience? You'll also start to see the rolling out of things like business models and feature sets. We can't wait for you to check it out. We can't wait for you to engage and collaborate. Go to humancloud.work/marketmap today. You listeners are in for a treat. We have a special surprise in that last time you were on, Miles, we broke down the SOI, the State of Independence, and literally every single conference is using that data to show that the flexible workforce is resilient, it's systemic, and it is the future. And so for you listeners right now, we have a very special surprise in that Miles's book is now live, and every single one of you better pick it up. It's going to be a link in the show notes. And you're going to get a sneak peek into the brain of Miles and why he wrote this book, what really to know. And it's kind of like, Miles, you know, when you kind of hear the end of a story, but it gets you more excited to watch it. Our listeners kind of get that, where they're going to hear this and be able to read your book in a way that they go, that makes sense. That's why he was talking about that. So what I'm going to do quickly, Miles, is I'm going to give you a quick summary of what we took away from this, and then we're going to build up. And so
awesome.
The first thing that I noticed, Miles, is there's a connection with your dad that we're going to talk about. And I doubt you expected me to bring this up. This was not planned, but there's a connection there that we want to get into. The second is we're going to get into the new mindset of the workforce. And so, for you listeners, if you do have the book, page 7 and page 12, get into the misconceptions of the independent workforce, right? The way that you put it on page 12, not to get too nerdy, was some credits hit below the belt, which I think perfectly summarizes how some people talk about the independent workforce. If
Yep.
it's researchers and academics, they talk about it like it's this exploitation and this shadowy workforce. If it's people that are just full time their whole life, they talk about it like, oh, you're in between jobs, right? That's one of the things you put in
Right.
here. So that was the first thing was, hey, this mindset. The second thing is for you listeners, you always hear me talk about the positive, right? But one of the things is that you should be skeptical. And so instead of just going, yep, we're in the future, or yep, the future is independent and flexible, how do you know? And the way you put it was, how do you know if you're in the jump, right? How do you know that right now we're in this cognitive leap and this isn't just a fad? We'll use something like, remember NFTs, where
Oh
it
yeah.
was like, oh, this is the future. um, don't hear much about it right now. But how do you know that this shift to independence is a systemic jump? And so there was a lot of things that you brought up. Fractionalization and specialization was one example. Unbundling was one example. The no more retirement was an example. And so you listeners, that's one aspect is this idea of how do you know you're in the jump? How do you quantify it? The last thing was the advice on what enterprises should do. I don't know if you meant to do this, Miles, but there's a lot of things that leaders should write down and they should start doing as a company. And the first is the 30% pledge. This was like in the middle of the book, Miles. This to me was like you put this on the cover. And when Bill Gates, what is it, the 99% pledge, where basically Bill Gates and others were like, hey, we're going to give all our money away,
Oh, right.
right?
Right.
Every enterprise needs to have a 30% pledge where they're pledging 30% of the money is going straight to the independent workforce because it makes their whole company better. The next was the 60-30-10 leadership rule that you have. We're going to get into that.
Yep.
And the
Right.
last was actually, there's two more things. Stocks versus flows made it so practical, right? Of like, hey, you buying stocks or are you navigating the flows?
Yep.
And then the last thing for you listeners, the CSE, which this is where it's going to be tough not to get into a massive societal discussion between you and I, because we'll talk for days about this.
Yep.
But you taking a stance to say, hey, this might be the new contract, right? Full time employment was the contract for the last 150 years.
Yep.
The CSE might be the new contract that every company and individual can get behind. So, Miles, that was my quick takeaway of those three things.
I'm good to go on all that stuff.
Now, here's the first question to you.
Yep.
So, writing a book, it's not easy, obviously, and it's usually a labor of love in terms of, Miles, I love you, but this book is never going to make as much as probably you working 100 hours and billing out your time.
Right.
And so, books are never, you're not going to become rich off the book, but you had a reason that you wrote this, right?
Yeah.
And it was massively valuable. So let me start with the first question of literally just why? Why did you go through all this pain and this labor of love? Because you also lead one of the most important companies in the future of work. So you could have just focused on that, right? But why this book?
Yeah. So there's the why gets back to or gets to my view on the importance of being authentic and having an independent mind. And I just find it. I can go a lot of different threads on this, Matt. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, and you hear it all the time, is perception is reality. Perception is reality for everybody except the person who knows what their projection is not real.
Hmm.
And we're in a society where people are trying to pretend to be something they're not.
Hmm.
Like you take a picture, you're out for dinner, you take a snapshot, and it looks like everything's great, except there's this projection thing going on. But if you're not who you're presenting you are, it's a miserable way to go through life, in my opinion. And I've been just raw, authentic my whole life. And I think that it's if you want to be happy in life, you got to be authentic. But to be authentic, you have to be vulnerable. Like, you got to be willing to be vulnerable. And what it means is not everybody's always going to agree with you, and that's okay. Like, so even at MBO, one of our principles is we communicate with candor and with empathy, because everyone will come at things with a different perspective, and that's okay. You respect other people's opinion, but I show up authentic, and I want my team members to show up authentic. And the best independents are truly authentic people. Like, they know who they are, they know what they want, and they're trying to navigate that gene or that desire they have to be authentic in a world where you're kind of told to pretend that you're something that you want to be as opposed to who you are. Yeah. And that, I wrote the book. That's why it's called Freebirds. That's why I talk about it being in the future of work in the independent mind. Because I think that, you spend so much time, so much of your life at work. And if you can't be authentic at work, it's like a third of your life. Yeah. So think of this. So I can give you examples, right? Companies say, we want to hire diverse people. And so they go out and they say, we're going to do all kinds of diverse hiring. And the first thing, or one of the first things they do when people show up at their company, is they put them through a training program to try to make them homogeneous and think the way we think at this company. I just think that's a mistake. Now, again, somebody else could argue with me and tell me why they think that's the right thing to do. True embracing of diversity is celebrating people's differences, not trying to make them homogeneous. You see it all the time. Like, this is the way we think, right? So that's kind of one thread on the answer to that. Why did I write the book? And then the second one is, there's all this discussion about work-life balance. Implicit in a statement that says work-life balance is that work and life contradict one another. Why is that a foregone assumption? Why wouldn't your work and life complement each other? And so I don't think of it as that there's competition between my work and my life. Work is just part of my life. And when you find that you're doing something that you have a passion for and you really love, and you can be your authentic self, you take all that noise out of contradiction and conflict between work and life. And so those are two of the reasons I wrote the book. Is I want people to kind of feel that they're free to be able to be their authentic self, and you can be successful being authentic. You don't have to pretend that you're something else. And there's lots of terms and words for it, but for me, it's, a free bird is, I think of a free bird as somebody who is independent minded. They're extremely adaptable and extremely authentic. And that's why I wrote it. Because, by the way, this doesn't just relate to work. It transcends aspects of your life, whether, I can go on, but like, who trusts central authorities anymore?
Yeah. And it's funny. So, we're kind of diving into a little bit of middle to end in terms of,
yeah.
So when you say that first part about the authenticity, to me, it relates to the unbundling concept that you were talking about. And it relates in this way to me, is that, so I never understood what the saying sort of, it's lonely at the top meant, right? Mm-hmm. Especially like first couple of years of working, you're like, lonely at the top, ugh, right? Sounds like luxury problems. But then you get to the top and everyone is yes mamming you, right?
Right.
And to me, that is inauthenticity, but the corporate incentives in most cases incentivize that, right? And show me an incentive and I'll show you a result. And in most cases, we have to be honest that being a middle manager, it is not best to be your authentic self, give the bad news, whatever. There must be some seriously high corporate trust. Now, the result of that we're seeing right now, and this is in April 2025, is it is the year of efficiency and the year of just gutting everything that is not directly value adding, and that inauthentic, able to do the politics in a corporate environment is not directly value adding in most cases. And who has never had to deal with that? Independents, because they put their ass on the line to drive outcomes or drive the impact. And instead of reviewing your contract every year under a kind of a quasi performance review, they have to do that weekly, monthly, or whatever sort of the SOW aligns with. So when you say authenticity, it hits to me the unbundling aspect that you were talking about. Now, let me open that up for you to say, hey, why is this the case now, right? So why is this book written in 2025? Why wasn't it written in 1985? Or why can't I just ignore this until 2050?
Yeah, so I don't write about this in the book, but I'm going to lay out a scenario for you that takes it from a human needs perspective and to answer your question of why now. Okay, so if you look at post-World War II, what happened this is in America mostly, okay, I'm talking about right now. In the United States, post-World War II, most households were married households with single income. So what it was traditionally the man went to work. He went to work for a company that promised him a defined benefit plan and employment for life. There was loyalty there. And that ran its course for about 20 years until the late 60s, when people started saying, well, gee, I can't really have the lifestyle for my family that I would like. And a lot of it comes down to the cash flow. So, and it's at all incomes levels. It's whether it's for basic needs of food, water, shelter, or whether it's keeping up with the Joneses. I want something more. So what happens is we start to see the emergence in the late 60s of dual income families. Okay, why are they both working? There's lots of reasons, but a primary reason is they want more cash flow to live the lifestyle they want to live. Okay, and you see that runs its course for about 20 years. And it's not that this starts and stops just exactly, but it kind of runs its course for about 20 years. And then all of a sudden, we've gotten as much juice as we can out of that system of a household being two income earners. And, we invented these things called securitizations. And the most prominent one that you can see in spades is mortgage-backed securities. So by the invention of securitizations, and particularly mortgage-backed securities, the housing market has fueled the U.S. economy for the last 40, 45 years. And it really fueled it all the way up through the mid 2007, 2008 kind of time frame. Again, about another 20 years, because people could create money, i.e. cash flow, to live their lifestyle by fractionalizing their assets. Okay, so I do talk about the fractionalization of everything in the book, because when you fractionalize an asset, you make it possible to bring more liquidity. And when you bring liquidity to a market, value rises for everybody. Okay, so now you're sitting here in the mid 2000s, and we have the housing crisis and the Great Recession, whatever you want to call it. But we've started to see before this, but not the way we see it today. But you started to see the emergence of, gee, I've got dual income families. I've used all my assets to generate cash flow for wealth. What am I going to do next? I'm going to start doing side gigs. Okay, and part of it is because because technology and innovations, and I talk about this in the book, make it possible. The barriers to entry have never been lower to be able to do side gigs and do independent work. But people start doing side gigs and they say, well, gee, I can create multiple economic flows for my family in addition to my full-time employment that I was doing. And now we're sitting here in 2025, and more people are realizing I can work as an independent, and I can do I can do the work I love the way I want, when I want it. If I'm good at it, I can make a lot of money doing that. So that's just kind of a basic needs flow. And then you kind of, there's two other factors, and one I've touched on already, but the first is in the United States in 1980, if you worked for a private company, 2/3 of those employees had a defined benefit plan. Today, it's less than 10%. So the loyalty or the bond between worker and company, i.e. corporation, was broken. Okay. Now, I could argue that it should have never been created to begin with, because mathematically it's really hard to work for 30 years and then get paid for another 30 years after you're done. But that's a whole nother, discussion. So you have that, but then you have the innovations. And when you have multiple innovations, you get demonstrable deflation in terms of lifestyle and the ability to use things you otherwise couldn't afford. And so when that happens, and you have this lifestyle, all the barriers have dropped. Like so just think about it. In 1980, if you wanted to start a business and go out on your own, first there was significant geographic reach limitations. Like who's your market, who are you going to sell to? I mean, obviously the world existed, you could sell to it, but the barriers to accessing all of the billions of people on the planet was very difficult. Today, you can reach anybody anywhere, basically, or nearly, right? What's it cost to open, to put a shingle out and start a business? You can start a business with effectively no money today. You couldn't do that nearly as easily. And so the barriers are just so low. And the need, i.e., I need economic flow to feed my family. If you just keep it that basic, I got to feed my family, feed myself, however you define your family. That's why. And then you wrap around it that we know that independents, the successful independents, we know that they're happier, healthier, and wealthier than when they were an employee. Look, I'm not advocating that everybody should be an independent and there should be no full-time employees. That's not my point in the book, nor here today. My view on this is we have the opportunity to unleash people's separate identity and authenticity as independents, i.e. as free birds, to be able to do their thing the way they want to do. And it's so easy to do. I mean, we haven't talked about this, Matthew, but I have another book that'll probably come out in about 12 to 15 months. And it's about how does a free bird handle their own health and medical care. And the reason you can, when I say you can be so informed about medical treatments, traditional, alternative, innovative, et cetera, in ways that it just wasn't easy to do, but we couldn't do it before because it's too hard to get it. You had to get, 12, 15 years of education in order to be able to get any kind of knowledge on it. It's just not the case anymore. You can get the knowledge so quickly. I'm not supplanting doctors, but the common person can become much smarter on their own healthcare than what they could have before.
Yeah, and I think so. So this dovetails into sort of, I want to get in the middle of this jump. I want to keep riding this. What is the jump? And, I want to stick a little birdie in the back of your head and you listeners as well. And I do want to stick a birdie in terms of globalization / what's happening in the different regions, because in some ways it mirrors where we were 5 to 10 years ago. And in other ways, it actually goes ahead of where we can be. And I'll just give you quick little data. So we just, sponsored a big research report in Singapore. It's the first ever in that region. And what it came across and showed was that a lot of these sort of freelance / talent marketplaces / talent platforms, they've kind of leapfrogged a lot of what these other ones had. And so they don't have like these big open marketplaces that look like auction bidding systems. And so that's one huge thing they've leapfrogged. The second, though, is their older workers are actually the most in demand because rather than retiring, they're going and joining startups and joining, helping younger employees. But so that's just a bird. What I want to get into is I want to get into how you and how MBO has changed through this jump. And I want to make sure you listeners know that we had a prior episode with Dustin Talley where MBO is the entrepreneur factory. And so in our space, MBO is like the PayPal mafia. And so MBO started as my business office, but you have a very interesting vantage point because MBO has always been inherently entrepreneurial in its DNA. And that might be one of the only reasons that you guys have survived all the different transformation within the jump. And so, I mean, bring us into your world and both you and MBO. What was the start of this jump? What's it been like? Tell us about how you've had to personally navigate this.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring this up. So the founder of MBO, Gene Zano, who I know that you know really well, Gene and I became really good friends. And the first time I met with Gene, I met with him because he was a vendor of my prior firm, PwC. And we're meeting and just talking about business and stuff. And Gene's an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. He says to me, he goes, "What? You're an entrepreneur. What are you doing in a big company?" He's like, he goes, "I don't get it." Right. And so the jump, and he and I were just talking a couple of weeks ago about this. I said, "Gene, we're coming back to the future for you." Because when MBO stood for my business office, right, to set up be the entrepreneur factory, as you said, to pick up on your words, right? And then what happened is,
right? Like 96, 97. Yeah. So I want to make sure you listeners know this is not like 2016, right? This is
it was 1995 is when he started. Yeah. And then, so what happened though is he was helping independents be successful. And one part of that was he would do their invoicing for them. So one of our the client yet today, his first enterprise client, somebody called him and said, "Who are you? I'm getting all these invoices from you for these contractors that I use. Like, what do you do?" So, Gene explains what he's doing, just thinking that and then like he gets through the conversation, they say, could you do that for all of our independents?
Yep. This is the entrepreneurial problem, and it is perfect. Yep.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Right. And then you got to step back and say, well, I should do that for a bunch of enterprises. Why wouldn't I do that for all kinds of enterprises? So that's where he got started. And that's how I met Gene. It was when I was at PwC, and we needed somebody to do our classification and payment flows administration of the independents. And he was MBO was the right place to go for that. That's how we met. And then when I decided that it was time for me to move on and do something different, I joined, MBO and invested. And Gene and I are great friends and partners, and today, and and now here we are again, right? We're now here again, and people are saying it's, you think about the timing. He started in 95. The timing I laid out was that we're now at a point where more and more people are saying, at record levels, right? Are saying, I think I just want to do my own thing. And it's back to what you asked me earlier, like, to be successful doing your own thing, you have to be authentic. And to be authentic, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. And vulnerable means there's some people that will tell you how you're going to fail. You know this because you're an entrepreneur. You're fail. That's the silliest idea I've ever heard. You should get a job, right? And people are saying no. So I look at it and say, well, if we can help people go do the work they love the way they want, that's a good day. If I can help one more person do that, right? And so that's, I wrote the book for that, and the jump is here. And I think, trying to get back to your thing about being in the jump, part of it is when you have multiple innovations that converge, you get demonstrable change. That's why these barriers have dropped. So why are people independents? Why do they choose to be independents? It's really a sophisticated answer. Because they can. it's possible. It wasn't possible in 1980. You couldn't reach markets. You had to, you didn't have employees. It was harder to get the employees. Your reach and like and frankly, this is the piece that maybe we'll get to today or not. I don't know, but part of what I call for in the book is a change in the social contract, because and I really am saying the regulatory regime that governs the relationship between worker and company or person, or you could say, or those paying for the value of a human. That relationship is geared towards everyone should be a W-2 full-time employee. And I think we know it's changing, right? We know that since, I got different statistics, but one of the most compelling ones is in the last 5 years, the non-farm employee rate has grown at 1.35%, and the independent professionals have grown at over 6% per annum. It's about 500% higher. And then we don't see that backing off anytime soon. It seems to be really getting stickiness to it. So, I'm really excited about where it's at. And if you can help people live a better life, man, like, why not?
Yeah. I love the starting from Gene sending a bunch of invoices, right? Like just starting from, hey, this is valuable and I can make $1 when you make $5. Okay, cool. Now you'll make 10, I'll make 2. Okay, cool. And now, manage the whole company. Oh, sweet. Yeah, I'll do that. But you mentioned, so listeners, if you have the book, page 44, you say that the new advanced way of doing work doesn't just save time, it makes the impossible possible. Now, this, to me, is one of the most killer aspects, because let me give you a quick story that I dealt with in my first time getting in front of enterprise. And so, I started in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, like changing the world, yada, yada, yada. Everything is so, blue sky and whatever. But my first ever week at Microsoft was a trip to one of the largest healthcare companies over in Europe. And I'm feeling like hot shit, right? I'm like, I'm going to wear a t-shirt and a sport coat. And like, I'm showing up with the Microsoft logo. Like, this is going to be great. And so I do my presentation and, the executives, big old boardroom, and they asked me, they go, so where are we on this journey? Are we first? Is it middle and the end? And I jump up and I'm like, you know what? You're one of the first. I'm like, you can lead this charge. And they look at me and they go, oh, no. That's not what I want to hear. And it was like, it was shocking to me, right? It was like whiplash. I was like, what do you mean you don't want to be first? That's insane. But that question is how, to me, this space kind of always gets overrun by, usually. Now, when you say the impossible gets made possible, to me, that screams, hey, Blockbuster, have fun with Netflix, right? Hey, Radio Shack or Circuit City, have fun when it goes online. And I think, this is part of the crux of why does every CEO need to read this book and talk with MBO and you, is because it's not this cute little business school thing anymore. It's literally, hey, do you want to pay for your kid's college fund? If yes, you better adapt to this. If not, do the same thing you've been doing and have fun when you get disrupted by a little startup or your competitor. So what I want to ask you, Miles, is it's 2 areas that you can go. The first area can be, what if companies do nothing? What if no one reads this book, right? What if they just give it to their kids to draw on? So that's one direction. Yep. And then the second direction is, and it might be 2 for 1. When you wrote this, what did you fall in love with? Because every writer has, a couple passages, a couple themes that they fell in love with. And so there's 2 directions for you, my friend. You pick.
Yeah. Look, I'll probably take the first one right now, because there's so many things in the book that I love, right? So the first one I love is, the first thing, the first part of what you just asked, what you need to do is you don't do anything. Like, part of this book in my thinking is based on some fundamental principles that it's the 6 trends that I talk about in the book. None of them on their own are revolutionary. I don't think they
Can you
are.
list them, Miles? Like quickly, and I got them in front of me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, so one is that the rate of change is accelerating. Okay, the fractionalization of everything. Progress is deflationary. We're moving from knowledge flows to from knowledge stocks to knowledge flows. Well, it's the war for talent. It's the human capital scarcity. So, and what I mean by that is, so here's what I think is interesting. And again, people can disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But we have a human capital scarcity issue. We do not have too many people to do the work that needs to be done. And you can say, I don't know, Miles, I hear like all this AI stuff is going on. Like, you know, we got all this excess in the government, all these people are going to get laid off. So just a couple of data points. When the Gutenberg press was invented, people said that it was going to put people that did tablets out of business, and that, you know, communication, it was nobody was going to have any jobs doing communication. We got more people doing communication jobs today than we had, like millions more than we did back when the Gutenberg press was invented.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you bring it, you know, dial ahead a couple hundred years and you say, well, when Lotus 1-2-3, VisiCalc, and Excel came out, it's going to put the accountants out of business. It didn't put the accountants out of business. It made everybody an accountant.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone does analysis. There's more analysis going on with numbers now than there ever was. You know, when Uber came out in San Francisco, the taxi ride market, I think, was a $300 million market. 5 years later, it was over $1 billion market. Oh, you're going to put all the taxi people out of business. If you think of it as you're going to put the taxi drivers, first of all, it didn't put taxi drivers out of business. But if you say, well, you're being in the business of moving another human from point A to point B, there was 5x more people moving people from point A to point B. And the reason is that the experience was so much better with the new technology and innovations that people demanded more. So you had more people doing work and moving others from point A to point B. So when you have demonstrable innovations that drive societal change, you end up creating more demand than you have the capacity to deliver. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that the rate of change is accelerating. And I'm kind of like, thanks, Sherlock. Like, who doesn't know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But by the way, the first time I wrote that was in 1998. I wrote that the rate of change is accelerating. We all know that things change, but the rate at which it's changing was accelerating. And there's other people much smarter than I that, you know, have, you know, Metcalfe's law and et cetera. But when you combine that with this idea that fractionalization of everything, so think about this. The smartphone effectively came out in 2009, 16 years ago. Can you imagine living your life? Right?
I had a little taste of it. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of sweet. I do miss that flip phone, and boy, do I miss it, but I can never go back. But
it's just a part of what you do now, right? Yeah. But it's a great example of progress is deflationary because there's more computing power in a 5-year-old's pocket for less than $500 than you could have bought for $100 billion back in 1969. Yeah. Right. And so when you get that mass adoption, it's not slowing down. It's not slowing down. The innovations are coming faster and faster and faster. And so you wouldn't have, by the way, you wouldn't go back to the smartphone. You wouldn't have the smartphone if you didn't have innovations in network capacities, in micro technologies, in data storage, in glass technology. Like, it's multiple innovations converging that create a demonstrable change for society that makes progress is deflationary. And so once you get your mind wrapped around some of these principles, that's what I think about. That's what I love about the book is I think I've identified principles that have some permanency to them that guide you in business, and you need to think about it in your business model. So you'd ask at some point along the line here that says, you know, if you do nothing, doing nothing is actually doing something, which is you've made the decision to get passed by. for some individuals, they may decide they don't want to do anything because they just don't have what it takes, and it might just be that they have the ability, they don't have the desire to change and keep charging forward. But if you choose not to change, you will get passed by.
Now, so I'm going to ask you, it's not theoretical at all, but it is very, very, very business practical. And, I know there's going to be an intro on you, Miles, in the beginning, right? And so you listeners, you've already heard Miles' intro, but your answer is not going to be some techie like me in sweatpants who doesn't understand the way of the world when it comes to monetary policy and a lot of more advanced topics. But so my question to you is going to be, okay, let's say everything becomes kind of free, right? Knowledge becomes free. Everyone has ChatGPT and the next equivalent where we can have AI create whatever we want, right? The tech is small, the tech is powerful, you name it. Stay there, Miles.
I am here. Perfect. Another call came through. Sorry about that. I should have put airplane mode on.
So the tech is small, the tech is free, and right now in this moment, I'm a large company executive. I'm an enterprise executive. Why should I not just go and buy all the semiconductors, or go and buy all the technology, or go and try to have regulatory capture and just go pay people off in Washington to make sure there's no new entrants? Why should I not just go and try to buy all the tech right now? And what should I do? If I shouldn't do that, what should I do instead?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with this answer on this concept I talk about, from knowledge stocks to knowledge flows. So knowledge stocks, in the way that I describe it, and the way what I mean by it is, a knowledge stock is when you say, I have a piece of knowledge or value, and I'm going to protect it to such a great extent that that thing, it could be the knowledge of this, I'm going to trade it in binary transactions. In other words, a binary transaction between you and me, a binary transaction between me and another party, and that's how I'm going to make my money. Okay? Well, when I do that, the rate at which I'm going to improve this asset that I have is going to be slower than if I open it up and allow many people to tell me how to improve it. And my ability to take it to multiple people is going to be limited, because you're living in a linear world, not in a world of thinking of it in a way of quantum entanglement. Okay? And so if you think that way, to make it even more simple, a protectionist mentality will serve you well usually for a discrete and usually a short period of time. But over the long time horizon, protectionism does not survive. Okay, and that's how we ended up with, tech companies were originally very proprietary. Then you get open source, right? And that makes stuff free, but it improves it. And then when you get multiple people improving it, the experience that is a derivative of the improved capability is so great that people will pay for the experience they're getting. I'm not using experience in a soft way. So I'll go back to the car example. The experience of being able to dial up a car, I know that it's going to be here in a minute and 23 seconds, and it's going to deliver me to where I'm going in 17 minutes and 17 seconds or whatever it is. That experience is so good for people that they will engage in it. And multiple people are using that same technology to deliver an experience, right? And so you can decide that you're going to try to buy something and protect it. It's not. It'll have a finite life to the value. Whereas when you embrace knowledge flows, you create infinite value potential. I don't know how to say it. I mean, some people, I think, don't really understand that. But
yeah, and if we had to make it So I'm going to force you actually to put a time horizon on this. So, hey, I'm going to go buy all the semiconductors in my industry.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe would that last for what? 6 months, 2 months, or 6 months, 2 years, 10 years? In the old days, I mean, to be honest, in the old days, it would have lasted maybe 10 to 20 years. But now, sure as hell not. But so if you had to put a time horizon on it, what would you, and this is, Miles, this is you and I talking, drink to drink to a CEO, not in a boardroom anymore.
Yeah.
What would be the honest answer?
I'm going to say that um, it's gonna. Two comments. My first answer is the one that my fiance hates when I tell her this. It's gonna last for a shorter period of time than you think.
Mm.
Okay. And I'm gonna say that pragmatically, I think it's months, not years.
Interesting.
Okay.
I love that
So
answer.
so if you think about knowledge and the way data is made available and the way you can sort through data now, like knowledge is, I see so many different statistics, but knowledge is doubling, in months, not years or decades, let alone centuries.
Yeah.
Right. And we've only tapped into a very, very small part of the human brain.
Yeah.
And so the capacity for humans to learn, and we haven't talked about this yet, but one of the key attributes I say of a free bird is somebody, they're extremely curious and they know how to learn and apply that learning. So they have the curiosity to always want to learn. They don't think they know everything. In fact, they've accepted that the more I know, the less I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they embrace that and will take, opposing views, complementary views, just take views of others and just take them in stride and saying, what can I learn from this? As opposed to why can I try to make the point that that person's wrong or that this person's right? Just what am I learning? And the more you learn, and then can I apply those learnings to better myself or better the experience for those around me? Long-winded answer to your question about semiconductors, but the rate at which innovations are occurring, I'm not an expert in semiconductors, but I can tell you that there's somebody out there today that's got a new semiconductor that nobody knows about yet, and it's going to be known probably in a few months. That's not a prediction. I'm just being pragmatic about it.
No, absolutely. So listen, I got two more questions for you, okay? And
Sure.
one you're gonna laugh. I'll give you the last first, okay? The last question is gonna be, what principles do our listeners and leaders need to be able to hold on to navigate this and that cheesy thrive, not survive line? Okay, so principles meaning the 30% pledge. Hey, at Human Cloud, we're into the 30% pledge. If we want to start, making every company sign this, we will be the first to sign it. But so that's going to be the last question. But the question I have leading up to this is, Miles, tell us about your dad. And I asked this because of what you put in the beginning of the book. Tell us, I don't know if this is the first time you've been asked this, but tell us about your
It
dad. I
is.
cannot wait to hear about this man.
Yeah. So he passed. Well, he passed away about a year ago, but he like everyone, not everyone, most people have some very fond, thoughts and place in their heart and soul for their father or their mother, right? And so I just remember at a very early age, he told me, you define yourself, don't let other people define you. I project that in a way that I say you need to be authentic, right? But it's the same point. Like you define who you're going to be and get happy with that. And then that's who you should go be. Don't let other people define who you are. And I think in the book, he spotted me my first investment for my first little business when I was 11 years old.
Oh, that's awesome. What was it?
It was called Watkins Home Products. So most people have never heard of Watkins, but many people may have heard of Amway.
Of course. Please tell me, Miles, were you taking stuff from your house, reselling it, and then
No,
having no cost?
I had a little vinyl briefcase that had like spices in it and cleaners and ointments, and I would go door to door and sell those to the houses around the neighborhood. And by the time I was 14, I had a full-time employees working for me full time. It was multi-level marketing is what it was. And,
That is so. Where'd you get the products from?
from the company called Watkins. They manufacture. By the way, they still exist today. They're around. Yeah, that was my first business, and my dad spotted me the money to do it. He borrowed me, I don't remember, 25 or 40 bucks. It's in the book. I don't remember the number. It wasn't a big number. Made me pay him back.
That's a good dad.
Yeah. So I just I obviously have a lot of joy in my heart for him, and really respected a lot of the things that he did. So that's the thing about my dad. And then on that last question, I think about it more from the human side, and I'll be a little bit maybe redundant with what I said on the front end of this, but it's where my passion sits. I think the best thing you can have as an individual is where you're finding fulfillment in life, because you can be authentic. You can create the kind of financial security that suits you, and that's different for each individual. And you have the ability and the commitment, the discipline to be healthy, because if you're not healthy, you have a hard time working and creating wealth. And then the fourth pillar is relationships. If you can get the four things of health, wealth, work, and relationships all gelling, you can live a very fulfilling life. And I think that's what Freebirds are. And I think that is also why we're seeing this emergence of independence. The best freedom, the best control, that you can have is to have the freedom to do what you want. And the way to have the freedom to do what you want is to get those four things right. You don't have to work for somebody else. You don't rely on a doctor to just tell you everything about your health. You're not scraping for your last dollar to go feed yourself, and you have relationships that you can count on. Yeah. And so that's how I think about it. And it's very possible. I always say I'm living my best life ever. And, it's because of the way I've been able to structure what I do every day, and the other three pillars, right? So that's for me. That I would just encourage people to take that step, and as it pick up on your term, get in the jump right now that's out there, because there's a lot of opportunity. Despite when you can read a newspaper or listen to news or whatever, you can get kind of depressed about it, but change is good as far as I'm concerned. So it's all opportunity.
Well, listen, Miles, it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm not even going to say it went above expectations, because your expectations are like sky high now. And so it met the already expectations. For you listeners out there, go buy the book, and for three buyers, we will pay for it. We will refund the cost, but you have to leave a review. So send a screenshot to the review, send it to hello@humancloud.work, and we will send you a nice little refund, give you more gifts. Maybe even Miles will throw in a little t-shirt and stuff. But that is on us. That is on Human Cloud. Miles, thank you. Listen, I know we're probably going to talk again, hopefully this year, and I can't wait when the SOI comes out next, and you got a new book coming out in 15 months. I don't know. We're all going to follow whatever productivity hacks you're using. Maybe that'll be the next topic. But Miles, thank you so much for hopping on.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. I love what you guys are doing. Happy to chat anytime.